Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Game of Gymnastics podcast. This week I'm joined by Danusia Francis-Reed, a British gymnast turned NCAA legend turned Olympic gymnast for Jamaica. We'll talk about her journey, her advice for the next generations of gymnasts, and what she's doing to spread the world of gymnastics far and wide. It's not one to miss out on. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Game of Gymnastics podcast. Thank you all for listening. And today we've got a very special guest. I'm honestly very surprised that she agreed to do this with so little prompting, so little convincing. So she is a veteran of women's gymnastics, an Olympian for Jamaica, competed for and in Great Britain for many, many years, and had a very substantial and successful NCAA career. I would like to introduce Danusia Francis-Reed.
Thank you, Winston. That's a lovely introduction. And I've seen your podcast, so it didn't take too much convincing.
Well, thank you very much. So just a little bit of an overview about yourself. Who are you? What do you do now?
So I'm Danusia Francis-Reed. So now I do a few different jobs. I do presenting. So I was lucky enough to be commentating at the Paris Olympics, which was amazing, a real dream come true in this part of my career. And then I'm still involved in gymnastics. I'm on the board of British Gymnastics. I'm also on the Pan American Athletes Commission and just do a lot of freelance coaching and choreography and also a bit of recruiting for gymnasts that want to go to college in America. So it keeps me busy.
Very nice. Yeah, got a lot going on. Yeah, definitely. So just to give the audience a little bit of a background on you and why you're so interested in gymnastics. How do you get into it in the first place? So where did it all start?
So my mum was a single parent of 4 children. So that was a lot of energy for her to handle. So she took us to a lot of after school clubs and activities, and someone suggested gymnastics. So we went along to an after school gymnastics club and I just loved it. I was just so in awe of, they were probably just doing cartwheels and forward rolls, but I was like, wow, I need to be able to do all of that. And yeah, you know, when you're that age, it just becomes an obsession. You love it so much. And then discovered that I had talent as well. And yeah, just from there, I just didn't look back, and eventually went to Heathrow on a scholarship. So I was at boarding school from the age of 9. But that was an amazing decision for me. And all these sort of big life decisions I made at a young age, they all stem from gymnastics, but they really shaped my life and sort of who I am today.
Yeah, I think when you get into gymnastics, you really get into gymnastics. Yeah. Your whole life revolves around it. Like there's no turning back from it. Just kind of why I've done this, to be fair.
Yeah, and your family life as well. Like everyone has to be a bit involved, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. Like my sister used to do gymnastics and my mom's a gymnastics coach. So yeah, like everyone's involved with it. Yeah. So from then, how did you get to competing in like the British and then further?
So I was just kind of following the pathways, doing compulsories and voluntaries. And then the first one that you could do when I was 9 years old was compulsory 4. And I won that. So that was crazy because obviously you don't know how good you are against everyone else in Britain until you compete against everyone else in Britain. And then obviously we went on to the voluntaries, and then I ended up winning the kind of combined British Championship that year. So the first chance that I could to become a British champion, I did, which was just unbelievable. And looking back, it's like pretty cool. And I always keep that medal. That's one of my favourite medals because it kind of was such a big moment for my young self. And then just going forward from there, just carrying on through the ranks. I think I sort of stayed at least in the top 6 all throughout my career with Great Britain, which was until I was 19. When I was 18 was when I went to UCLA, so University of California in Los Angeles, on a gymnastics scholarship. And I did one more competition for Great Britain, which was the World University Games, which you have to be a university student. So obviously it's a little bit easier. You're not fighting for a spot against the rest of the national squad, just a few people. And that was an amazing competition, actually, a really great one to kind of finish my Great Britain career on, because to then carry on competing for Great Britain while living in America just wasn't going to be feasible to, fly back from LA to make squads and trials and stuff. Bit too expensive. And when you're on a scholarship, obviously that's your priority. So I kind of looked into my options, and I never thought I would want to compete elite again. But going to college gymnastics really made me fall in love with the sport again. It's just so much fun out there. It was just such a great experience. So then I'm half Polish and half Jamaican, so looked into both options, but just felt like I'd fit in with the Jamaican team. I've always been a massive Usain Bolt fan, so that really convinced me.
Aren't we all?
And then started competing for Jamaica. So yeah, that was a crazy ride, and I definitely see my career in chapters and was very much an adult when I was competing for Jamaica. So that was cool because I had just the authority and I was really dictating my career at that point. And after college, I did stop for a couple of years before then going on to aim for my Olympic dreams in Tokyo, which obviously I did end up becoming an Olympian in Tokyo, but it wasn't without some hiccups along the way.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, so when you talked about that first British that you won, would you say that was the sort of moment that you realised that you could be something in this sport, that you could do great things in this sport?
Yeah, I think so, actually. When you're that age, you obviously don't kind of keep an eye on the scores and you don't really think, where am I ranking? So I just remember being stood there, Guildford Spectrum, and you're lined up around the outside waiting for them to do the presentation and having no idea where I'd come. And then obviously they go sort of from 6 to 1. And then when they said like the British champion and they said my name, I just remember thinking, like looking around, just thinking, no one else has stepped forward. It must have been my name. So tiny, like taking this massive step up onto the first place podium and like looking for my mum in the crowd. And obviously for her too, she had no idea that I was kind of like that good, so to speak. So yeah, it was just an amazing moment. And then I remember then sort of thinking maybe I can go to the Olympics. I remember seeing it a few years before, and being inspired by it then. But yeah, then I think it felt like it could be something real.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very very big achievement, getting British all-around gold. Like, that is like, when you're that age, that is the top achievement that you could do out of anything. So that sort of would be like a defining moment in your life, probably the defining moment up to that point in your life. So yeah, definitely. You also mentioned the NCAA and competing over in America. What drew you to that? What sort of was the thing that pulled you into there?
Initially, obviously I spoke about how much I loved gymnastics as a young child, but then, you get into your teenage years, there's all the pressures, there's school, and, national squads and stuff like that weren't always so fun. And when you start to realise you're good, you put that pressure on yourself as well. So kind of in my teenage years, I was always thinking I would stop gymnastics at 18. That was the age I was going to be for the 2012 Olympics. So I was like, perfect, I'll stop gymnastics, go to university, start like the next chapter in my life. And that always felt right to me in those years. And I thought whether I make the Olympics or not, it's kind of just a good stopping point. And then a couple of my friends went out to America and my mum was like, oh, why don't you look into it? They're doing 4 more years of gymnastics at that point, when I wasn't enjoying it as much as I had when I was a child. Just seemed like a lot. But she was quite persistent in like, at least look into it kind of thing. And I was like, for some reason, I said to my mum, I'll only look into it if I can go to UCLA. And I didn't even know if UCLA had a gymnastics team at this point. I just like heard of UCLA. I think it used clothing brands that they sold, and it's obviously quite a well-known university. And I think I just did it just to quieten my mum down.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then my mum was on like a message board that those type of things they had back in the day, and said like, oh, this is my daughter. Do you think any universities would be interested in her? And a few people replied to her, and one of them happened to have connections to UCLA. So they sent over a few videos of me to the coaches, and they were interested. So then at that point, I'm I do stick to my word. So I was like, okay, fine. If the coaches are interested, I will go and look at it. Now, when I look back, I'm like, wow, I was so like entitled, thinking, fine, if UCLA likes me, it's like one of the best universities in the world. So I went off and had an official visit where you go for a weekend and you get to experience it. And that was what sold me. It was just incredible, like straight out of a movie. The campus is beautiful. And we went to a football game, and some of the teammates took me out to a party, and it was just literally like a movie, and you're not far from Hollywood. And yeah, I was just like, okay, Mum, you were right. Fine, I'll go.
I'll concede that you were right this time.
Hey guys, Winston here. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. If you are, please do leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you can. Also, if you want more gymnastics content from me, you can check out my Instagram at wpowell05 or my TikTok at winstonpowell5. Thank you, and let's get back to the episode.
Obviously, you did some amazing things over there. What were they?
So when I was there, I scored 2 perfect 10s, which was amazing. And I really love that it was out of 10 again. Obviously, the code of points has changed for a long time now. And even in my career, in elite, I've never been able to get a perfect 10. So to kind of have that to aim for, it really makes you kind of tune in on those finer details and really make your routines as perfect as possible. Whereas in elite, I think a lot of the time you're almost just trying to get through your routine. Obviously, like as clean as possible, but a wobble in your beam routine wouldn't be a big deal. Whereas in college, a wobble is a massive deal. It's the difference between like a 9, 9 and a 10. So you're really trying to aim for perfection. And I do think that in a sport like gymnastics, those perfect routines are that next level. So it's really cool to have that to strive for in college. So to get those, and they were both on beam, which has always been my favourite and best piece. So that was amazing. And I had this signature dismount, which I could do this skill, which was like a sideways free cartwheel on the beam. I think I just played around with it once when I had like an injured wrist or something. And then when you get to college, obviously they want to know what skills you can do. So I just sort of told them, I can do this, but it was kind of a bit risky to just have in your routine. And then coming in for my second year, one of the coaches thought of the dismount. So going the sideways free cartwheel into a dismount off the side. Sounded crazy, but you kind of have a bit of time in pre-season where you can play with skills like that. And I managed to do it. And it was honestly the scariest skill to learn at first because the margin for error. And I definitely had a few fun falls on it. But once I got it down, it was actually really consistent. And it was really cool to have a kind of standout skill. And no one else has really done it since. So really cool to have a bit of a signature skill. So I think those were probably 2 really defining things. And then I also became the NCAA balance beam champion in my senior year, which was a really great way to finish off my career there.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like it. I mean, having sort of, how would that work? So I've got 2 sort of questions about how does that work. First off, how does the perfect 10 work? Like what gets you to a 10? Is it, because I know there has been a competition very recently. It's like an online competition where you start with an execution score of 8 rather than 10, and then you've got difficulty up to 2.0, and then that's how they added up to a 10. How does it work how did it? I don't know if it's changed or anything. How did it work?
So still out of 10 now. And you have to have certain requirements and obviously skill level to start from a 10. But most of the D1 colleges, everyone will have 10 start values. And then, I mean, I don't think this is controversial to say because I see it a lot online, but I would say now the judging's gone a bit crazy and like there's been a lot of 10s. A lot of the records are a bit skewed, but you really had to be perfect. And you almost always had to be the last person. So 6 people in the team compete on each piece. You kind of had to be the last person in your team on that piece to get a 10 because it really had to build up. So say if like the first few people had done really good routines and the person before you got like a 995 or a 9975, then that really set you up to get a 10, but you still had to be perfect. It wasn't a given by any means. So during my 4 years in college, I saw two of my teammates get a 10, and then saw one other girl from Stanford get a 10, and then I got my 2 10s. So what's that? That's 5 10s in 4 years that I witnessed. Whereas now I've seen like 3 in 1 meet. So it's definitely changed a bit now. And I do think it was really exciting when it was like, okay, oh my God, the person that started the rotation got a 9-9. And it's like, can the last person get a 10? Because obviously you tend to put your best person up last. Yeah, so, and you kind of, if you were that last person and you knew you were capable of a 10, if your other teammates had done their jobs, you obviously had that pressure on you, but you're also really grateful because you were like, okay, they set me up, like it's now or never kind of thing. So yeah, it was a team effort in a way to get to that 10 as well.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, that's pressure that you're putting on yourself, though. Like, I don't think many people would be like, okay, now you need to get a 10. But yeah, it is pressure you're putting on yourself, but also it's valid. Like, it is a pretty incredible achievement to get that, because people will obviously, elite gymnastics is different, and I think people confuse the two because of NCAA probably. But people often talk about the perfect 10 in gymnastics. In elite gymnastics, that's just not going to happen, like, ever. But in that, it literally does have to be perfect to get a 10. And that is, obviously that's what you're striving for in training. But considering you got 2 in your entire 4-year career, that says a lot, especially considering how good of a gymnast you were.
Thank you.
I don't know if you got back in the gym, maybe you'd still be good. I don't know.
I did try my dismount a few months ago and managed to do it, but I don't think I'd be getting perfect right now.
That is impressive, yeah. So, what was the coaching like over there? Obviously, it's 2 very different countries. Well, similar in some senses, different in others. But like, I feel like the coaching styles would be very different in America to in Britain. What sort of were those differences?
Yeah, I would say I was really lucky all through my gymnastics career, my club career, that I had great coaches, and they were always definitely about coaching the person. It wasn't like gymnastics. Like, they took us on trips abroad, trips to the theatre. We always did a massive Christmas show at my gym, so they very much were about that fun aspect as well. I'd say the major difference is obviously once you get to college, you've got most of your skills and you're all 18 and above, so everyone's adults. So there's a bit more kind of individualized sort of treatment, but also it's weird to say it like that because it's also all about the team. So some days in training, which would be the main differences, would be like they do like games or points and just try to make it a bit more fun. So for example, they might say, okay, you're in partners today, and in your partners you need to score 30 points on each piece. To score 30 points, you have to do 2 routines each that have less than 0.05 deductions. But I can't think of my maths right now. 0.5 deductions, and just stuff like that. Or like a stick could be 5 points, and they just try to make it a bit more fun, but also where you're always working together. Whereas obviously in elite, it's a lot more individualized. So yeah, I'd say those were the main differences.
Fair enough, yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the fact that you had to sort of build up to a 10. And I'm still very confused about that, honestly, because my thought is always you sort of get what you do, sort of like the execution that you get is based on what you do, not based on any other performances. So how does that work?
Well, I'd say usually you would just have your, what they'd call your anchor, your 6th person would be your best person on that piece. So it's usually like that was the person most capable of a 10. And so if everyone else had maybe not done their best routines and your highest score so far was like a 9.75, then to then leap to a 10, the judges just probably wouldn't, because it's kind of like your team needed to be worthy of the 10. And I mean, if they really did stand out and do this amazing routine, the judges would award it. But I would say you'd still probably see a 995 or a 9975. I really feel like that build up, and then like the audience would be getting into it and being like, oh my God, and just that atmosphere, you know, the judges are human beings and they would just be swayed by that, like that natural build up. And like if the person before you's got a 995 or a 9975, and then that last routine is clearly better, then they have to go to that 10. It's just that kind of like build up, and that it just tended to be like that, and that was kind of like the unspoken strategy.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, like it's sort of unintentional bias then, rather than anything else. That makes
Like it's not written like the first person can't get a 10. That's not a rule by any means, but you just usually you'd have someone really good in your first position because you want to have a great start, but you'd usually have your best person last.
Sure.
And then that would just be the natural kind of build up.
Cool. Yeah, you also mentioned beam quite heavily. That's, as you said, was your favourite piece. What inspired your unique style on beam? Like, what was the reasoning behind it? Or
well, I would say actually I was lucky again that my club coaches and my college coaches, in college in general, they always try to play to people's strengths, but my club coaches were kind of into that as well, and not just on beam, on all the pieces. And like on bars in my elite career, I did an Adler squat dislo, which obviously not many women do. And like my club coaches, they call it like a flower in the routine, something that stands out for the judges. Something different. So I was kind of always tuned to that slightly. Then obviously when you go to college, because everyone's out of 10 and can get a 10, you really have to stand out, and it's really about the performance. So yeah, they kind of push that to that next level. And then in terms of beam, I would say just with the dismount, I just had a knack for it. I would say before that, I don't think I was doing anything that was too different. I think I've always had a natural performance quality, and I've always enjoyed that aspect of gymnastics. When we went to college, or when I went to college, our head coach was always about the performance, and she instilled in all of us that we should smile, and beam should be a performance as well. It's not this serious, scary thing, and that actually kind of smiling and enjoying the dance part and showing off to the audience and the judges would also make the routine look better, and you'll actually enjoy it and be a bit more relaxed yourself. So I definitely took that on board and then brought that back with me to my second stage of my elite career.
Yeah, well, that was my next question, actually. What was it like transitioning back from the NCAA to elite gymnastics?
It was really interesting. I think in college you have a season from January to April, and you compete every weekend. So you're competing so much in such a condensed period that I really felt like I became such a good competitor. And so it was really nice to be able to take that into my elite career, and competitions became just a lot less scary and daunting because you were just doing them so often. And the audiences in America are just, there's like 10,000 people every single weekend. So then when you're coming to even like a British Championships and there's 2,000 people, it's not, it's not that big a deal, or it's just everything's kind of put into perspective a bit more. So I think that was really, really helpful. And then I think the other things that were helpful was just trying to have fun with it a bit more. I would say I was already naturally a fun person and did try to enjoy competing before college, but college almost just gave you that permission and just brought it out of me even more.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Because obviously you'll get better at the thing that you do over and over again, the thing that you repeat. And if you're competing multiple weekends in a row for like months on end, you're going to get pretty confident and get pretty good at that. So you're going to be able to have that confidence. And like for me, competing in front of 2,000 people, that's a lot. But moving from 10,000 to 2,000 does seem like a hell of a lot less. And it's a lot less daunting, I guess. So yeah, I do see where you're coming from with that. And then eventually you went on to compete for Jamaica. What was that transition like? How, what actually happened behind the scenes almost?
Yeah, I'll come to that, but I just wanted to add something to the previous question.
Go on.
As well as competing every single weekend, say if you made a mistake, then you get to correct it immediately the next weekend as well. So I think that helps, because if you do make a mistake in elite and your next competition is like months later, then you can like build it up and it can just become, just a bit more of a thing. But if you've got 5 days until your next competition, then it's like you work on that thing in the gym and then you get to correct it almost immediately. And as well as that, during the weeks, we'd have like sports psychologists and we'd have loads of meetings. We'd watch videos of everyone's routines and you really were analysing it and like thinking, how can we improve? Whereas that was something that I would never have sat down and watched my whole competition after an elite competition. So yeah, that was a really different, aspect to it. And in terms of the transition to compete for Jamaica, so it was interesting. So there was already a couple of gymnasts competing for Jamaica, so 2 sisters that were based in America. And so got in touch with them, and their mum was the vice president of Jamaican Gymnastics at the time and helped me through the process of getting my citizenship and competing. But where it was a very small governing body with not many rules or no rules really, and kind of compared to Great Britain, where it's been, established for a long time. There's very like black and white of what you do and don't do and what you need to do. It was a bit messy at times, but I think that's kind of how it would be when you're just trying to grow something from the ground up. And obviously, there's not much money behind it, so kind of that self-funding aspect was a bit different. And then I was also working to support my gymnastics. Whereas with Great Britain, obviously there's funding. So there was definitely differences, but I think it was perfect for me at that time, being an adult and not having the rules that came with being on the Great Britain team, kind of dictating my schedule and stuff like that. So yeah, it was hard at times to not have the support of an established governing body like British Gymnastics, but it also suited me to have the freedom.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's just a bit more. You can be more like individual with it. You can just sort of do what's sort of right for you rather than having to be dictated by the rules of the national governing body. But also at the same time, it is quite hard without the support of said national governing body. So you take the good with the bad, really.
Yeah, exactly. Swings and roundabouts. And now kind of like doing the jobs that I'm doing, like on the board and on the Pan Am Commission, it's been really good to have both of those experiences, because I can bring, a diverse voice now, and having had both of those experiences, I can kind of, pick the good things from both and help to move the sport along.
You were a reserve for London 2012, and then you eventually became an Olympian in Tokyo 2020, but in 2021, obviously. What were those 2 experiences like?
Yeah, so for London, it was hard because that had been what my career had really built up to. And it was difficult. I would say the process was interesting. At the time, they tried to make it objective. Obviously, we're in a subjective sport, but the people in charge at the time said, okay, we're going to do it on a point system. So like where you rank in each trial is worth points. And on paper, it sounded great. But then as the process went along, they added things to it. And then it wasn't maybe fully as fair as it looked on paper initially. And yeah, I mean, me and a couple of reserves, we put in appeals. So that was kind of like a bit of a messy process. But in the end, I think it was a good experience for me in the end. I actually got to be part of a show that was opening every single one of the events in the O2 for the Olympics. So I just that was my silver lining. I had an amazing time doing that, and I was just having fun and soaking up the Olympic atmosphere. And I actually ended up fracturing my wrist during the Olympic camp, like the build up just before. So in my head, I kind of thought, okay, obviously being reserve was really hard and sad to be that close, but then I would have broken my wrist regardless, because it was just an impact fracture. It wasn't like an accident. So It was just inevitable that would have happened. So it's kind of like I would have then, if I'd been on the team, I probably would have had to give my kit away to the reserve, and that would have maybe even been harder. So I think, yeah, it was really hard to be that close. But I do think everything happens for a reason, and I ended up having a really great time doing those shows. And then actually for Rio, I competed for Jamaica in 2015 at the Worlds, qualified for the Olympic test event, but Jamaica and, as I mentioned, the sisters that competed and the mum was the vice president of Jamaican Gymnastics, they made a decision to select one of them to go instead of me, even though I'd qualified the highest. So that was really hard to then be that close again. So for me to then go on to Tokyo, I think it was a really difficult decision to start the process, because I thought I'm putting myself in that vulnerable position to maybe, quote unquote, fail again. And, that's hard. So it was difficult to start that process. Part of what spurred me on was that they changed the rules in FIG, that if you qualify at the World Championships, you qualify your name instead of your country, so that your country then can't replace you. So I thought, okay, this time it is actually all down to me. It's not down to selectors. If I go, it's like I've done it and no one could take it away. So that was kind of what motivated me to go for the Tokyo Olympics. So then to finally do it at that 2019 World Championships was really a moment that I'll always be proud of myself for.
Yeah, very nice. And how was the actual games? Because obviously it was very different to the normal games, no crowd, and had to social distance and everything. So what was that like?
Yeah, again, I'm an optimist, and I always look for like the positives in situations. My coach and I have a really great bond, and so he's an optimistic person as well. So we just went out there and we made the best of it, and we had a lot of fun. Every day we went out in the village and just like took advantage of the facilities, went shopping every day in the shop, bought all the merch, spent way too much in that shop. And then when I was there, I ended up tearing my ACL. So that was obviously terrible. But I'd come that far in 3 Olympic cycles plus an extra year. I was like, I'm becoming an Olympian no matter what. So to have my coach by my side, who'd been on that journey with me through all those cycles, was still really special. And yeah, I think it's a unique experience that kind of like no one can ever really fully relate to. But yeah, it's when I saw Paris the next year, it really was quite emotional to then get to see people celebrating with their friends and families after their routines. And it wasn't even the ACL part that upset me. It was just being able to have your friends and family there. Even though I only did like 3 skills on the bars, if I could have had my mum and my siblings and my husband there, that would have just really meant the world to me. And I know it would all for them, especially my mum, who's obviously been there since day one. So I think that's probably the hardest thing. I didn't, but at the time during Tokyo, I didn't kind of like think about it too much, because like, what's the point in trying to get yourself down when you're at the Olympics? But watching Paris, that was definitely hard.
Yeah, I get that. Like when you're there, you're in the moment, and you're there to soak up the experience and have a good time, really, with it. Like you're at the biggest competition in the world for 4 years, so you may as well make the most of it. But yeah, it's that sort of, when you're looking at it retrospectively, you sort of see it from another angle, like, yeah, it would have been really nice to have this or that or whatever else it is. But again, you sort of take what you're given, and you've still managed to have that experience. You've still managed to become an Olympian, and you've managed to be able to say that. So it's still a huge achievement, especially after 3 cycles of trying. So
yeah, and I always think like, because every cycle I was so close, it wasn't like, oh, okay, like I wasn't even reserve or I didn't even qualify, like to be that close to then go to the Olympics and be kind of woe is me, even with the injury. Like I was never going to let myself do that. I was like, this is the dream that I've attempted to reach for so many years. I'm going to enjoy it. And being around Team Jamaica too, that was a really good vibe, like such a fun group. Obviously they're really serious and they're an amazing group of athletes and they win medals, but they're just fun with it too. And that's nothing against Great Britain or any other country, but I think like even other countries seem to recognise that in Jamaica, and people always want the Jamaican t-shirts and pins, and it just felt really cool to be a part of Jamaica at the Olympics. And yeah, felt really proud to represent, and also the feedback from Jamaicans, like the Jamaican public, even though again I only did a few skills on the bars, I just felt so supported, and so many people were telling me what an amazing achievement it was. And yeah, it did feel like, okay, like I did do this and it is valid, even though it's not how I dreamt it would be.
Yeah. And training for so many years would have been tough. So like all the way from 2012 to 2021 must have been quite tough. How did you cope with not just the physical, but also the mental demands of the sport for so many years?
Yeah, I think I was in college, obviously that was like a nice shift in mentality there, where it just became more fun. And then after I graduated in 2016, and that was also after all the Rio stuff, I did actually retire for 2 years and had no intentions of coming back. And then it was just a random week in around 2018 where loads of people just kept saying to me, oh, are you gonna go back to gymnastics? And this one I've been off for a year and a half at this point. And I was like, why is everyone asking me this? And then I was like, I haven't even thought about it. And I was like, maybe I should think about it. Started to think about it. It was actually, what is stopping me? And apart from that fear of failure, of maybe not achieving my dreams again, there wasn't really anything stopping me, like physically or mentally, with the sport. So yeah, I emailed my coaches and they were like supportive as well. So I wasn't even living near my gym at that time, but moved and made it happen. So I think that was what got me through it. And then in that last chapter from sort of 2018 to 2021, just having a really good support network with my coaches, my family, my now husband, just people that believed in me. And I really thought this is my last shot at that point. So I got quite into doing vision boards and stuff. And who knows if it was the vision boards, but it worked out to some degree. So, yeah.
You've mentioned how it's been really good and you've had a support network and all that sort of stuff. But obviously gymnastics isn't always positive, and there are tough days and you will often doubt yourself. How do you get through those times?
Yeah, I think it's the toughest sport in the world. My college coach, she would always say it's so tough because you can't pass the ball. You are up there alone. And I think sports where they're individual are that much harder for that reason. On those tough days, I'm trying to think. It's really interesting because when you said that, I straight away went back to kind of the teenage years. So I would say those were the tough days, and you're hormonal. And I think there was a really solid group of us at Heathrow where I trained, that were all around the same age and a really talented group. And it tended to be when one person was having a bad day, everyone did have a bit of a bad day. So I think it was, it's just trying to like lean on those people and then be someone that can pick you up. So I think, again, going to America, you learn that, and you kind of have the seniors or the juniors and the seniors who are the older people on the team at college. They've learned by that point, they're in their third and fourth years, that it is their responsibility to pick the team up. So there'll be times when at college everyone is having a bad day, and sometimes the coaches would do it, but it would often be those older people on the team that would gather everyone up and be like, look guys, come on, we've got 3 days till our next competition, no one's having a good day, and just give you that kind of pep talk. And so then I definitely then took that into my elite career after, and going back to Heathrow again as an adult, it is easier because you just don't have those kind of irrational thoughts and everything's a bit more in perspective. But I was able to hopefully pass on some of that wisdom to some of the younger girls that I was training with at Heathrow, and be that person that was positive and was, just bringing those good vibes to training. So I think, coming back from college, I was able to just come in with this new outlook and like every go counts, rather than like, why are you wasting time? Or if your coach has annoyed you, there's no point then wasting your goes, because it's actually affecting you more than it's affecting them. But as a teenager, it's hard to learn that lesson.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, well, most people, when they drop out of sport, will do it around then, because there's just so much like changing in your life. Your body is changing and everything's, yeah, it's not stable. Having to then compete at a high level in sport and push your body to the limits on a pretty much daily basis it's going to either cause some issues or just you're just going to not want to do it anymore, and it's hard to then like refocus and get back to that point in your life when you were enjoying it almost, and just sort of realizing like or remembering why you're doing it in the first place. So I think that it's quite hard to do, especially when you're a teenager, when you're still a kid, basically. I think that, I mean, the time for women becoming seniors at 16 seems a little odd to me, honestly, because they are still teenagers. They're not even 18 yet, and it's like, how are they expected to compete at the highest level at 16 years of age? Like Abby Martin was 16 and went to the Olympics, and it's like, yes, half of what the team would have been were injured, and that's probably why, half the reason why, like, the team was so young, but it still seems like a lot of pressure to put a teenager under.
Yeah, I do feel like as well, like you said, 16 to 18, even that transition, like you've hopefully gone through puberty by 18, you finished school, so there's just that a lot less pressure. And I do think, I know it's been a conversation for a long time, I don't know exactly where FIG stands on it, but I think I'm probably pro 18 for women to be seniors.
Yeah, I mean, evening out makes some sort of sense. I understand why, because women mature earlier than men do, but it still seems too young, like, even then. But yeah, being a senior now, like, it does sort of put a lot of things in perspective, and you do sort of calm yourself down a bit, almost. Like, you just need to, I feel like either you take it too seriously or not seriously enough. There's no like middle ground when you're like growing up with the sport. For me, it was always too seriously. Like, every go would have to be perfect, or I'd have to make some sort of improvement every day. And if I didn't, I'd failed that day. Like, some days are just bad, and it's sometimes hard to put that sort of in perspective. Obviously, you were older when you went into NCAA gymnastics, and then you went back to elite gymnastics. What do you think either gymnastics community as such could learn from each other?
Oh gosh, so I think, I'm just trying to think if if college can learn anything from elite. I've got a lot of lessons that elite can learn from college, but I don't know that there's many that college can learn from elite, to be honest. So I'll just go with what elite can learn from college. That would definitely be like the sports presentation side of things, the audience-friendly nature of it, involving the audience. I think the elite scoring system is just so complicated. Even if they keep it the same, can it be explained and broken down better? I think the team aspect is really, really fun. Obviously, I know it's an individual sport, but like maybe having more competitions where it's a bit more teamy, because it just makes it more fun, and you're just constantly like, you're rooting for your friends and your teammates, but when it comes to making a team above even like your best friend, obviously you want to beat them, and it's just like so individual. So I think that aspect could be brought in. I would love it to go to the perfect 10, but I think that probably where the routines are that much longer and there's a few more sort of like nuances to it, probably isn't realistic. But I do think, again, for the audience, perfect 10 is just way more exciting. And then in terms of like the day-to-day of college, and I've tried to kind of like bring these in my role at British Gymnastics, just we'd have to track our sleep and our injuries, and there was a lot of encouragement to open up and to say like, how are you feeling, you know, whether that was mentally, physically, even with your academics, and they just wanted to support you like so wholeheartedly and as a person. And they also call you a student athlete, and it was emphasized a lot at UCLA that like your academics were more important. You have to have a certain grade point average to compete on your team, and I don't think that can be fully brought into elite, but I think it's difficult when kids are missing a lot of school, and gymnastics is like the most important thing in their lives, and it's put on such a huge pedestal because you just never know what's going to happen, like whether they fall out of love with the sport, or whether they get injured, and then it's like their whole life's over. Whereas if they've got other things, and even with my club, they were really good in terms of like, if you did have school things, they would like allow you to go, and it wasn't kind of too strict in that like gymnastics was put so highly above everything else. I think we're getting there in that aspect, and obviously British Gymnastics have brought different rules in about missing school and stuff like that. But I would definitely say the main things would just be like the sports presentation and the fun. And I would love people in the general public to want to go to gymnastics in the way that they want to go to football games, you know?
You mentioned the presentation of it and getting people to understand the sport a bit more. As a presenter yourself, what do you think could be done about that? Like, obviously you said that the perfect 10, and it's quite easy with that because they know what you're aiming for. They know what the score, like the biggest score possible is. And in gymnastics, in elite gymnastics, it's kind of impossible to know what the biggest score could be. Like, you always think that one could be a cap and then someone beats it. So what do you think could be done to sort of maybe not educate the audience, but educate the audience?
So I do think British Gymnastics at the British Championships does do quite a good job. I mean, there's like t-shirt cannons, and obviously they do have the sort of fun walkouts and stuff like that. But to take it to that next level, even with like some of the stars and like the GB national squad, what they did in college was you'd like pre-record some fun videos which might play on the big screen during the touch warm-ups. So that was fun for the audience to watch and get to see the personalities of the gymnasts come out, which was quite fun. Or there'd even be like little quizzes and then prizes for them to win. Like, they literally win TVs and stuff.
Wow.
Obviously, like, that's like massive scale, but and then other stuff could be like if someone sticks a dismount, like just having graphics that were like stick, just fun things like that, or like specific music that plays, or if we did say like, obviously it depends because different pieces kind of score differently as well, which is hard. But you could even have a phone app that was like the audience gets to judge, and like they can just put in their score, and then when the score comes up it could be like, oh, this person got it right, just to try and like have some audience interaction. I'm trying to think, those are just like ideas off the top of my head, but and then even at the British Championships when Luke did his triple back, I was announcing one year and I just made a big deal out of it and highlighted to the audience that it was a triple back, and then a few people, audience members and like British Gymnastics staff, were like, I'm really glad that you did that because I wouldn't have noticed the difference between a double somersault and a triple, but obviously me knowing how hard that is, I wanted the audience to know that he was doing something that good. I think having announcers and people like that are knowledgeable and that are willing to kind of big up the gymnasts and the exciting skills, and just try to build that story and build that excitement for the audience can really help as well.
Yeah, because when you're a gymnast, it's kind of obvious when someone does like a big skill, and it's obvious what's harder and what's easier. But when you're just a generic spectator, you don't sort of realize what's harder, what's easier. And as a gymnast, you can't like sort of put yourself in the audience shoes and as an audience member, you can't put yourself in the gymnast shoes. So there is a bit of a divide there in terms of, well, just knowledge almost. So yeah, I think that could be the gap could be closed, but also at the same time, it's quite it's quite hard to know exactly how to do that. But I think those ideas were quite fun ideas to incorporate it, because it's all well and good trying to educate people, but if they're not going to listen, then it doesn't matter, because it's not going to sink in. So yeah. And you also mentioned a bit earlier now about basically gymnastics not being everything in your life. And I think British gymnastics is starting to sort of do some things about that. It was mentioned quite heavily in a meeting. I don't know what you would call it. It was kind of like a speech by David Hart, who basically spoke to all of the junior, senior development and senior men's, women's and trampolining athletes. So like basically outlining like sort of the plans for the next cycle/2 cycles. And he did put a big emphasis on us being more than just gymnasts, like being actual people and having social lives and other things going on in our lives rather than just being specifically gymnasts. So I think there is some amount of emphasis still being put on it. Obviously, it's a long way to go, and words are different to actions, and it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. But I think there maybe will be some sort of progress put forward, and I will try and get him on as well, so we know exactly what that might look like as well. I did email him, and he has actually now responded, so we'll see. Can't promise it'll be soon. What about improvements to gymnastics as a whole? Is there any sort of ongoing issues as such in sort of gymnastics as a whole, like FIG, or do you think it's more just individual national governing bodies that would need to alter what they're doing?
Yeah, it is a really difficult one, because it almost comes back to the individual and even the club, because you've got to find what that balance is for you. And obviously, to get to the highest level, you need to be really dedicated. It does need to be probably the priority, but at the same time, I do still think school needs to be a priority, social life needs to be a priority, because you need to have your balance right, and for your own mental health and sanity, and just for your own like personal development as well. It is really, really hard. And like for one person, they might be able to miss school and really just be so dedicated to their gymnastics, and that works for them perfectly. But for other people, I know personally for me, like I enjoyed to have a social life, and to I was like on a different sports teams for my school and did like public speaking for my school and stuff like that. And I also really enjoyed that. So it's like being able to explore different things that you're interested in. And then I also mentioned a bit earlier, but our gymnastics club was really good at like taking us on like fun trips and making sure that we also just saw other sides to the world and life. And I always look back and I've got so many fond memories with not only my teammates from my club, but also my coaches, which were outside the gym, which I think is really important and builds stronger bonds and more trust. But the hard part for coaches and establishments like clubs and governing bodies is that I do think it's individual, and it just makes it such a grey area, and it's going to be hard for anyone to get right. But I think where we can start, or where coaches and clubs can start, is by really just trying to get to know your gymnasts. And another thing that we did do in college was, as soon as you get there, within like your first few weeks, you do this really in-depth personality test, which is called the Enneagram. And then you get a number from 1 to 9, and each one is like a specific type of personality. And then once the new people have done theirs, so the incoming freshmen, you'll do like a massive team meeting, where you kind of like break down each personality type, and there's like an expert on the Enneagram that would come in and really like explain it, and you get a massive booklet that would talk to you in depth about your number, and you do like breakout groups. So I was an 8, so me and the other 8s would split off and just discuss it, because even like though we were all 8s, there was almost like a spectrum within in each number. So then we'd say, okay, I relate to that part. And yeah, and so then I think for the coaches, obviously in college you need to get to know people really quickly. So for the coaches, they immediately could realize, okay, they're 8s, they like this, this and this. But whereas the 7s, they don't like it to be as direct. They're more, if they're having a bad day, they want to be hugged and they want to be loved. Whereas another personality type might be like, I want to be kind of like told I'm not good enough and to have another go, and that might work for them. So yeah, I think that's a good starting point and can almost be a bit of a shortcut to get to know someone. And and hopefully within that you can also find the balance where someone else might need an extra day off, or more focus on their outside interests, whereas someone else might need those extra hours in the gym. So yeah, it's a minefield because it is individual and personal, but I do think that could be a good starting point for coaches, because I think coaches are in a space at the moment where they almost don't know how to coach because of everything that's sort of gone on. So I think that could be a good starting point.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, ultimately this sport is about you as an individual, about you learning what your body's good at, like what sort of skills you're good at, and then also how you need to recover, how you need to train, how many hours you actually need to do to be able to improve. Like because it's sort of like a bell curve in terms of how many hours you do and how much improvement you make, because eventually if you're doing too many hours, you'll just drop off because you'll get injured and you'll have other issues, or you'll have mental blocks. So you need to find the sort of right amount of hours for you, and you need to find the right sort of reward methods. And yeah, there's so much to think about, and it's all very individual, so it's impossible to sort of tailor an entire nation's way of training and coaching to everyone in said nation when it's such an individual sport. Well, any sport is individual in that sense, but because it's gymnastics, and because some people will specialize in men's gymnastics at the very least, like 3 specific pieces, and then someone else could specialize on the other 3 pieces, and they don't match literally at all. It's almost like they're doing 2 different sports, and yet they've got one program to cover it all.
Yeah, one sec. Yeah, and actually you're making me think of a couple of other things. At college, they actually, for the most part, when I was there, they would give us the day off before the competition. And if it was a home meet, you just had the day off. And then if you were traveling, it would be a travel day. And then I started to realize that was really good for my body. Like I would feel so fresh on competition day. Whereas some of my other teammates, for them, that wasn't good. So they'd usually go to a workout gym and just like do a bit of cardio or a bit of like strength training or something like that, and that worked for them. But because I realized that, then when I went back to my elite career, I was able to tell my coaches like I actually thrive if I have a day off before the competition. And then luckily for me, when I was competing for Jamaica, I was able to just do that and just say like, these are the days I want to train when we're out of the World Championships, and I'm going to take the day off before the competition. And if that didn't suit the other Jamaican gymnasts, obviously they just did their own thing too. But obviously with Great Britain, you can't really do that. I think they're starting to be a bit more flexible. And I know I'm good friends with Becky Downey, and she's obviously a lot older and she knows herself and her body and mind. And so they've been listening to her and some of her needs. And I think they're doing that with all of them a lot more. But yeah, that was something that I learned along the way. And like you said, everyone's different.
We both said that you need to be like a well-rounded person. You need to have a life outside of gymnastics. So what are some of your hobbies? What do you do outside of, well, now your job at British Gymnastics?
Outside of work, nothing too crazy, but obviously love to go on holidays. Still love getting a massage. That's definitely the athlete in me. Shopping, playing with my cat. Nothing crazy. I'm trying to think and I do a little bit now. I also like to try like different sports here and there. So I've done a bit of kickboxing, a bit of jiu-jitsu. I do some aerial hoop here and there. So yeah, I just like to try. Obviously, gymnastics giving you such a good foundation of athleticism. So it's really fun to try new sports and see where I'm at with those. Yeah, I'd say those are my hobbies.
Nice. And so, well, back to gymnastics, I suppose. Looking back on your career, everything you've achieved, what is the moment that makes you most proud?
Ooh, I think it probably would have to be the 2019 World Championships. That was the qualification for the Olympics. As I mentioned earlier, obviously after coming so close and knowing how sad and it can be after, like when you have that disappointment, knowing that it was all down to me. I kind of knew that I was capable sort of score wise and where I had to rank. But that almost made it harder. You know, if you're an underdog, it's like you've got nothing to lose. But where I knew that I could get into that Olympic qualification ranking, I naturally put a lot of pressure on myself. And I remember the night before we were in Stuttgart, and my now husband came the night before the competition, and he was like, "How are you feeling?" And I just started crying. I was like that nervous, and yeah, it just meant a lot to me. And I think, yeah, like I said, I think it was almost more nerve wracking because I knew I could do it. So it was like if I did have a bad competition the next day, I would have felt like I'd let myself down. Yeah, so I think being able to do that and knowing how nervous I was and to cope with those nerves and pull off a good competition and to effectively make my dream come true in that moment, I'll always be proud of myself for that.
Very nice. Yeah. Because I know that was also the year that Joe Fraser won parallel bars as well. So yeah, very, very good year. Very good year for the world champs that year.
Yeah, and Stuttgart, in Germany in general, I think they put on a really good competition. The crowd is really, really loud and invested, and yeah, they're quite good at that sports presentation side, like we spoke about. So yeah, it was a really fun environment. The year before, the World Championships had been in Doha, and there was maybe like 100 people in like a, I don't know, 10,000 seated arena, and it was just like tumbleweed rolling across.
Yeah.
The contrast was, yeah, a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds it. You've been a role model to so many gymnasts over the years, and you've achieved so much in the sport. What is one piece of advice that you would give young athletes who aspire to be where you've gone?
Ooh, one piece of advice. I think it would probably be to follow your heart. Sounds maybe a little bit cliche, but in terms of, I think growing up, I thought there was this set plan and that I was going to stop at 18. But I think now we're seeing so many more gymnasts go on for longer, especially on the women's side. I think men's has always been a little bit older than women's anyway, but we're seeing women in their 30s at the highest level in the sport. So I think following your heart in that sense, and you never know where it will take you. And I think if you are enjoying it, you're passionate about it, you don't even necessarily need to be the best in the country or even in your gym. But if you're enjoying it and you're passionate about it, then you never know what it's going to lead to. I think I've had so many random opportunities that have come from gymnastics, and they've all been not planned, but it's opened so many doors. And I think that's just been because I've been putting my heart into it and just been persevering and kind of just chasing my dreams. And then, yeah, you just never know what's going to come from it. So, yeah, follow your heart.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, with that, like, you definitely don't have to be the best in your gym because, I mean, having those role models so close to you as well is huge. Like, I've been training with, in the same club as Joe Fraser since 2013, I believe. So coming up on 12 years. And like having that like constant, well, he's always been there, and like having that role model there to sort of push towards and knowing where you want to go is quite cool. And I mean, yeah, I'm not the best in my gym, and I would never, like, it's quite hard to compare yourself to other gymnasts as well, because again, it's very individual, and your strengths is someone else's weakness, and your weakness is their strength. So it's quite hard to compare yourself anyway, and it's all based on performances as well. And you might have a bad performance when someone else has a good one, and then you might beat them in a different competition. So it's quite hard to measure yourself up regardless. So always comparing yourself to other people isn't a great way of going about it regardless. So yeah, always having that sort of either role model or something there to push you is very helpful as well. So I definitely don't think it's bad to be not the best person in your gym. I think it's actively quite helpful. It's quite beneficial if you've got the right mindset for it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Again, at the time at the time when I was growing up in the sport, I didn't realise, I definitely realised, but I didn't probably realise how good it was for me that we had such a strong group of gymnasts at our club. There were 6 of us that were in the senior national squad at one point, just from our club. So that was obviously an unbelievable group. And I think, like you said, we all had different strengths and weaknesses. And my closest in age and teammate, like her strengths were completely different from mine. And it just kind of spurred us on to she was always really strong on vault, and that was my weakness. So it always just kind of pushed me to work that much harder on my weaknesses, like you said. And I think the phrase is comparison is the thief of joy. So it's very true. And so I think when people are doing well, even if it's something that you're not good at, like, cheer them on. It's going to make you feel better than putting yourself down. And then the other quote, I'm full of quotes today, that they used to use a lot on my college team was iron sharpens iron, which is a really good one. And I think that was definitely applicable to my training group at my club as well. We had one girl, and she, not to put her down because I'm about to compliment her after, but she was probably the least talented, but she was the hardest worker. She would have her handguards on first. She was always doing the extra reps. And when I look back, I always feel so grateful for her, because she just pushed all of us to work harder. I think when you are naturally talented, at times you can sort of rest on your talent. So to have someone like that that's constantly grafting was really amazing. So again, like, I look back and at the time didn't realise how lucky I was to be surrounded by this amazing group. And it was definitely that iron sharpens iron concept.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good way to end it. But one question before we finish. Now you've been on, and now you've had a chance to experience what it's like to be on this side of the interview. Who do you think would be another good guest that I could have on to the podcast?
Oh, so many people. Let's see. I think someone that you could have that would be amazing would be Ellie Black.
Right, yeah.
From Canada.
Yep.
I think she is like the people's champion of gymnastics. She is an incredible gymnast, obviously. She's had her fair share of injuries, but I think one thing that Ellie really brings to the sport is just such a positive attitude and impact. And yeah, I personally think she's an amazing gymnast, but maybe even more of an amazing person. So I think you should try to get Ellie Black.
I'll do my best. See if I'm big time enough for that.
I believe in you.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you for coming on to the Game of Gymnastics podcast. Thank you to everyone for listening. Be sure to follow, review the show if you can. And I will catch you in the next one. Peace.